Hi, everybody. I just want to do some feedback on the classroom library discussion. I'm getting ready to read the classroom library pieces that you've been submitting over the past week, and I wanted to go through some of the key things that you seem to have discovered in doing the readings in preparation for this assignment. And with all of these types of assignments, there's a great amount of variety in who you are and where you're starting from and so on. I really appreciated those who put themselves out there and let us know that the classroom library, as an organized professional piece of their practice, wasn't quite where it needed to be. And the phrase "my library is just there" came up fairly frequently. I appreciate that this assignment is going to have that kind of practical application for you. For those of you that were already kind of developed and pushing on this, there are other aspects of the classroom library development policy that are going to be strengthening items for you. The first thing that I wanted to get out there is just some of the things on interest and so on. Megan brought up the question of whether or not she should have gotten rid of the Goosebumps collection that was just annoying her so much after a few years. And the wisdom that I hear from people who do well with a library collection is that if it's circulating, maybe you should keep it. But if a series like that gets to the point where it's just driving you crazy as a teacher, it's there year after year and it's all this group of kids reads, either you're going to have to swallow that pill, or there's always a new series to get excited about. So my suggestion would be that if you just feel like you're done with the Goosebumps collection, cull it from your collection and bring something else in that's going to have that kind of intensity in circulation. And then after 2 or 3 years, when you're like, oh, I'm so tired of that now, then you can take that out and bring in something else that's high interest. And that brings me to the concept that a number of you brought up, which was that there's the core library collection and there's the revolving library collection. And you might want to consider some of those series books possibly to be something that you would consider being part of the revolving collection. I don't know. That's totally up to you. I know that some of those series just last for decades and they'll be favorites forever. And I appreciate those of you who are saying that some of those favorite high interest books were some of the ones that administrators had forced schools to get rid of. You just needed to have some professional tools to be able to push back when somebody makes a crazy suggestion like get rid of the Junie B. Jones books. Not everybody likes those books, but a lot of kids like those books. That's the thing. So, and there is that balance of, they're just reading versus are they growing while they're reading? And it has to be both. There has to be this idea that kids are going to binge on whatever they decide they want to binge on. And that's going to be the thing that helps us. When I tried to help you to focus on the literate environment standard from International Literacy Association, I see over and over again since around 2001 and even earlier back to the birth of the standards movement in the early 1990s, that the skills focus often pushes us as teachers away from transforming our classroom culture and the environment at large. And what we want is we want a year-long cultural environment in which skills can grow and flourish. And that should take you back to the Donna Lynn Miller article from the very beginning of the semester, the one on how we can create these voracious readers. And it's just not going to happen without a classroom library. And flow in that classroom library does depend on some of these professional structures, a policy for how the books are going to come in and go out, how we're going to collect them, what we want and what we don't want, and so on. You might want to think about it as being kind of like if we're talking about flow, like a waterway up in the mountains, that without somebody managing the stream or the river that comes down a canyon, eventually it gets clogged up by logs or beavers come in and ruin this and stop the flow here. We want to be the ones that are in charge of that flow, not having some other outside forces determine it for us. The more you're in the teaching profession, the more people from outside are going to come up with crazy ideas that just don't make sense for your kids and ask you to do them. You need a way to push back on that. So connect these assignments as much as you can back to the standards. You need to know that back in 1993, when the International Reading Association, now Literacy Association, and the National Council of Teachers of English were approached and asked to write a set of standards that was like the NCTM math standards that were working so well, uh, that people pushed tooth and nail. They did not want to do that for literacy because they didn't want literacy to be perceived as something that was like chemistry or mathematics with this sort of fixed scope and sequence. And literacy is a complex activity, and it is in the humanities largely. So having those standards is difficult, but uh, over the years, the educators and professionals in the International Literacy Association have put together standards that make a lot of sense. And those standards happen to be largely ignored by the people who are writing the policies. So the Common Core standards, if you compare those to the IRA or ILA standards, there may be some overlap, but there's an awful lot of ignoring teachers as being the people who should write those standards. Um, so culling, C-U-L-L, culling is the idea of pulling books out of the collection. And there should be culling going on at all stages. As the books come in, like if people are giving you boxes of books or cast-off books, instead of bringing all of those in, you want to go through those and decide which ones you want to keep and which ones you want to send on. So actually a good part of your policy should be that idea of culling to begin with. So as you receive gift books, you should receive all of those gift books that you'll look through them for what you need, but then you'll pass them on to Goodwill or whatever. The other thing that you can do is that as your collection, as you decide to get rid of books out of your collection, if you think the books are high interest, then send those books home with kids. As you bring in new books to your classroom, those kids may need summer reading books, and that's a great way to send books home. Um, the social stigma in middle school and often in upper elementary school for some people around checking out books is interesting. There are a couple of things about that come to mind for me. One of them is exactly what was brought up in the discussion, which is that as long as we provide a safe space and time inside the classroom for those kids to read, we're providing a good literate environment for them. And as you put together that literate environment in your classroom, that's something that I hope that you'll be able to make contagious for other teachers around you, because it's unusual in middle schools and high schools to see a strong classroom library. If other teachers see it in your classroom, it'll be envious. They'll want to know how you do it, and you can share your classroom collection development policy with them. Um, the fear of social stigma is not the only thing that we have to attack. There are a lot of kids who actually have a fear of using the collection. If they use the collection and they lose one of your books, what kind of trouble do they get into? And the teachers and other educators I've worked with in the past, as part of their collections policy, they just decide after about a year's worth of experience, how much loss do I just have to swallow as part of the process here? And they get to the point where they're not upset about that because it's part of the policy. And then they're able much easier to let the kids know you don't need to feel bad, or I'm not going to try to make you feel like you're bad if you do something with one of the books that's not perfect. So um, sorting, categorizing, organizing your library, that was another strong theme in all of the discussions. And I appreciated the hints that you gave that that's vital. And it's because kids' interests, as you start talking to kids about what they want to be reading next, your way of pointing them to the next book is going to come through your brain. The fact that you have actually sat down and organized those books and put them into categories and so on, that will be your mnemonic device. It will be the thing that helps you remember, oh, you're going to like one of these kinds of books because you liked that book. Or if you're looking for this kind of book, maybe you should go over and look in that tub or on that shelf. So that sorting is actually beneficial for you as the teacher. It's your preparation for those teachable moments. Um, organizing by genre, format, author. Also, a number of you brought up the library organization tools that are out there. Goodreads is great, but I also just posted a folder full of apps that had come up in the discussion, as well as some links that I found on organizational tools that you can use. Uh, yeah, a number of you also keyed in on that idea that kids need to be able to look at the covers to be able to decide which books they want to read. The spines are not very engaging and not designed to be engaging. They're just designed to show you a title, an author, and publisher. So spines tend to be favored in shelving systems. But we need to have systems that bring the books out and get them featured by cover. Tubs and bins are a lot easier to flip through with picture books. The key thing you want to know with older kids, though, is that once we progress on to novels, the covers are okay, but it's usually the back cover that ends up being the thing that determines whether a kid's going to pick up a book or not, what they read on that back jacket in terms of the blurbs and so on. So let's see. Um, I think that's where I'm going to finish. I was just really appreciating the depth that you all went into with this, taking seriously the idea that the classroom literate environment is something that we organize as professionals, and that if we're ahead of the game on that, then we answer a lot of questions that come our direction, whether it's parents who have questions about the appropriateness of books, whether it's administrators who want to do all of this stuff with leveling or achievement or scores or whatever. Having that collections policy in place and having it already articulated is going to head off a lot of those questions that people have about your professional environment. All right, I look forward to reading the plans.